On this episode of In the Gun, the College Football Playoff National Championship is on the horizon, and we've got all your latest WVU transfer portal updates. All that and more on this edition of ITG.
Caution, this podcast contains bad jokes, optimism, and a healthy disdain for Pat Narduzzi. Watching it may increase your actual knowledge of actual football.
ITG.
All the pieces are in place for us to have a chance to win it all.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
There's Owen Schmitt in the building.
Like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
So where's he in? He in there, Jed Drenning?
I'm not much of an athlete.
The thing that's non-negotiable is playing hard and playing tough.
And Wesley Valen Uhler. You are in the gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 319 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I am the host, Wes Uhler, flanked as always by the best teammates in the business. We have got the signal caller, Jed Drenning. We have got the runaway, barbecuing, sharp-dressed beer truck, big Owen Schmitt, who might be on the IR a little bit with a head injury. We'll get into that in just a second. But before we do, you all know the drill. I've got the best teammates in the business, and it takes a village to put this whole thing together, and we've got some people to thank right off the jump here. Of course, everyone at Team Toothman, JR, the good people at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. A big thank you to Rick Lewis and Fortis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. To friends of the show, friends in real life, Johnston Equipment, Tem, Emily, Bryce. Make sure you're checking them out. Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. And, of course, online anytime. Johnston, that's with a T, JohnstonEQ.com. And, of course, the Book Exchange. Get all your WVU gear and apparel. Men's basketball team dropped some throwback uniforms a few days ago. They're pretty sharp. Maybe there'll be some new gear coming with that. Get all your WVU gear and apparel at the Book Exchange. Of course, shop their two locations, downtown and Evansdale on Patterson Drive. Or you can always shop online at bookexchangewv.com. We've got portal updates for you. We've got college football playoff on the horizon. But before we get to any and all of that, our dear Owen Schmitt, fresh out of concussion protocol after injuring himself, self-sabotage at work, Big O. What happened?
See, West Virginia, the buildings, okay, they're what you would expect an very, very, very old UPS building would be like. So there's a staircase, right, that goes upstairs. Well, part of that staircase is in the office, okay, and there's a desk underneath that staircase, okay. So if you can picture it, it's like this, the desk is here, right? Well, I'm sitting at one of the computers. I just stood up, man, and my head caught the corner of that sucker. Instantly dropped about 1 million F-bombs. I was in the building by myself, so it was pretty funny after the fact. But it was a very familiar sensation. I felt a pop. Knew I hit my head pretty hard, and then there was a nice warm rush of warm liquid that came down the old forehead.
When did you guys feel that?
Yeah, I felt that the last time I felt that was 2008 with the old Seattle.
Schuyler will put the pictures up for us to compare here.
You're going to miss this because you need to get on YouTube and see the picture that Schuyler's going to post. Yeah. Unless it is, in fact, the thumbnail for the episode, because he sent this thing to the group thread today, and we're like, what in the world? But it is Seattle Seahawks head smash part 2. That's exactly what it is. He looks like he hit the Oregon Trail and was on the business end of a tomahawk. He just showed us before he came on the air. He pulled his hair back.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what's really funny is I sent pictures to some of my higher up management people, my bosses. And I said, hey man, I'm going to have to take the rest of the day, man. A crazy man attacked me in the office. So I wasn't really lying. Okay. But
we're all looking for this crazy wanted maniac.
I was
Only
like,
Owen could take out Owen.
I told my family, I was like, yeah, some irate customer came in and busted me over the head with their package, man. Oh man, that's just
fantastic.
life. You know how it is. It just
Well,
happens.
Thought you caught porch pirate in action. Porch pirate in action.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
You know, Big O, a lot of people would have spent the rest of the day, the rest of the week on IR, but you are here for the
Yep.
show, and for that,
Yep.
we are grateful. We are not surprised. That's the hard edge that Big Owen Schmitt, the legend of the beer truck, has been living here for many, many decades. But we thank you for being here with us tonight and gutting through it. Hard edge.
Hard
Hashtag,
edge, hard edge,
hashtag
hard
hard
edge,
edge.
hard edge.
Yeah. Gentlemen, before we get into the meat of today's episode, which is going to be a portal update and then just some kind of thoughts and predictions for the college football national championship game, of course, Monday evening between the upstart Indiana Hoosiers and Kurt Cignetti's squad versus the University of Miami, looking to restore its old glories of a once proud and nationally dominant program. But before we do that, speaking of the college football playoff, expansion is back on the docket. A decision looms. December 23rd is when they have to decide upon any college football playoff expansion. And I know this is going to surprise everybody who's not really following this day to day. But essentially, there's a little bit of a stalemate right now, a little bit of a pissing contest, you might even call it, between the Big Ten and the SEC. Because, of course, why not? Why should they be the only two who are making the decisions about an entire sport of hundreds of schools? The Big Ten and the SEC actually meeting in Miami, in South Florida, ahead of the national championship game, trying to decide what to do ahead of that January 23rd deadline. There's been talk of expanding the 12 teams to 16 teams. There's been talk of expanding to 24 teams. And like I said, kind of, I think, a stalemate currently, but looming that 11th hour when a decision has to be made on the future of the college football playoff. Jed, where's this all going, partner? Give us your best educated guess.
A lot of ground was ceded to the Big Ten and the SEC by the other decision makers with an understanding, a tacit understanding that, look, we're going to give you a lot of decision-making authority as we move forward with this 12-team playoff process and beyond. I don't know that they were left much choice. You could argue that they could have fought harder, but what leverage did the other conferences really have? So at the end of the day, leverage was granted. And now, as you touched on, the scenario is such. Heather Dennett, here's her post. The Big Ten is willing to consider a 16-team CFP field in 2026 if the SEC will commit to a 24-team field 2 or 3 years later ish. All right. Multiple sources have told ESPN this. SEC commish Greg Sankey has no interest in committing to that 24-team structure right now. And if Sankey and the Big Ten commish Tony Petitti can't reach a compromise by that deadline upcoming on January 23rd, the field will remain at 12. So here we are. A decision needs to be made. We're stuck between this battle. It almost feels like a custody battle, and we're watching our parents fight in court, and we can't do much about it, right? It's like a Kramer versus Kramer moment for the ACC and the Big 12 and the G5 conferences. But here we find ourselves in this situation where right now it's at 12. I don't know if the numbers as flawed as the process was. We talked about that on the show before. And I don't know that 16 or 24 would be ideal. Nothing's going to change necessarily unless you change some structure. I think you can hit a sweet spot. If you want to go to 16 or 24, great. And if you want to maintain the integrity of the regular season, you still can. But there's things that need to happen and things that need to change. Like, for instance, this whole thing of if you're a top seed, you don't get a home game, that nonsense has to go. It's things that you should be clamoring for from a seeding standpoint through November as you're battling to be seeded higher, and those games all the way through matter to the very end. You don't want to drop a game in week 12 if it drops your seed. Well, you should be granted a home game, maybe even 2 home games if your seed is high enough. Right now, you're sitting there in the top 4 thinking you got a neutral site game, but a bye. Well, those byes haven't worked out very well for these teams, right? So sometimes they've worked against them, but home field typically does work out for you. So that's something that needs to be structured in. If you want the regular season to continue to matter all the way through and not see teams tanking and resting starters, a la the NFL sometimes in the last week or 2 weeks of the regular season, make it so the seeding matters in terms of if you are at home or not. That has to matter. And the other point, and I can't say this enough, if you hand me a microphone or a platform, I'm going to sing this and scream this from the highest building until my last day on this earth. What you need to do is mitigate the number of at-large bids. Because if you trust a committee to decide who's going in and don't play it out on the field, we saw and know how that will turn out. It will get boxed out. If you're not in the Big Ten, you'll get boxed out if you're not in the SEC. I'm not even sure, Wes. They're talking about guaranteeing 4 conference spots in this 2014 playoff format. If you want to guarantee 4 spots, have teams play for it through the regular season. If you finish the regular season as the top 2 teams in Conference X, you're in. Great job, great regular season. You're being rewarded as a top 2 in your conference, and you get 2 of the 4. Now, who gets the other 2? Have 3 play 6 and have 4 play 5 and battle it out.
Yep.
On the football field. Don't leave it up to the discretion of a committee. Have them determine it on the football field. It's right there in front of you. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you say, hey, we're going to guarantee this number and leave a whole bunch of at-large? Get rid of the at-large to the greatest extent possible. I understand this is college and it's not the NFL, and there's always going to be some structural differences, at least enough that you have to involve a committee. Don't involve the committee more than you have to. That's my whole point. So if you can find a structure and a formula that you know going into the season, oh, my conference gets 4 spots. I either better have a great enough regular season to finish in the top 2. That's how I get in. I know. Or I got to win those 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 games, or I'm not going. No committee can bail me out. No committee can rescue me. No figure skating judge can decide I look prettier than everybody else, and they're putting me in anyway because it was decided on a football field. That's what I'm all for. I don't care if it's 12. I don't care if it's 16. I don't care if it's 24.
I agree 100%. I mean, home field advantage is huge. I want to go to one of these home college football playoff games. They just look way more intense. The atmosphere looks better. As a fan, I think you're 100% right there, Jed, with, let's settle this with what we're doing. We're playing football here. Let's settle it on the gridiron. It's going to be luscious TV contracts anyways. The more football you play, the more intense it gets. You look at March Madness as a platform. I mean, just dollar figures alone, big money is spent everywhere. So, I mean, as a revenue aspect, you almost kind of would like a couple more games. But I've really enjoyed just this year. I mean, this playoff year this year has been outstanding. Good. It's been great. Adding 4 more teams, adding 8 more teams. I guess more people would be more apt to play in playoff games than bowl games.
Yeah, let's see what happens. If it's on the field, I don't care if somebody complains if they had an opportunity to win a 3 versus 6. Oh, you don't like being knocked out?
Yeah.
Well, then you should have won that home game against the 6th place team in your conference for that play-in game. Stop complaining. This isn't like the old days when a committee thought the other team was prettier and you were complaining about that. Remove the committee dimension as much as possible. Can't do it entirely, but as much as possible, and play it on the field like Owen said.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
I think you guys are spot on. The only thing I would add is just as everything that we loved about the sport of college football for 150 years continues to die in less than a decade. Let me go ahead and boomer it here for 5 seconds. I just hate we're going to get to the point very soon, if not in 2026 already, that conference championship games mean diddly squat or don't exist. And I hate that. Because I realize Ohio State and Alabama don't give a rip about a conference championship game, but 95% of college football fan bases still think it's pretty cool and still think it's a big deal. Ask the Indiana fans how much the conference championship Big Ten game meant to them. Ask the Duke and Virginia fans how much the ACC. As much as I hate to give them credit, ask Pitt fans how much that ACC championship game in 2021 meant to them. Ask Baylor, who did it a few years ago in Texas. And Texas, and ask Texas Tech fans, who won the Big 12 championship game for the first time, a month ago. Things still need to. We're killing everything. Rivalries don't matter anymore. Geography doesn't matter anymore. Bowl games don't matter anymore. we're going to get to a point we probably already are that conference championship games don't matter anymore either. And I just hate that. Like I feel like a female dog. Like I feel like a BITCH family show here, okay? For like always complaining about this, but like it's the sport that I loved my entire life that continues to just have its heart and its soul ripped more and more out, like Indiana Jones every single year. They got to take something else that we love. And like I just, man, we are placating this entire sport for like 15 schools who only care about winning national championships. And that's that I almost said that's great, but it's not. That's terrible, because there's 130 other schools that play for much more than a national championship every single year. It just drives me nuts, and I'll never stop complaining about it. If I live to be 100 years old, I'll never stop complaining about how they killed our beautiful baby in less than a decade.
You know what's ironic about it? Conference championship games in college football are a very recent phenomenon.
They are.
When I was growing up, there was no such thing. For the first 100 and some odd years of college football, you didn't have them. The college football conference champion was determined through the regular season and the regular season only. You're not talking about until the mid 90s. That was 5 minutes ago.
That's when I was. Hey, hold on. That's when I was a kid, Jed. That's right in my wheelhouse, baby.
5 minutes ago. And that's when these TV, partners started recognizing, hey, if we throw this extra game on there that nobody's ever asked for before and we never needed before, we can make a whole bunch of extra money. And that's what spawned this. But from 1869 to the mid 90s, there weren't conference championship games. That's very new. That's very new and contemporary.
Conferences weren't even a big thing until the 90s.
That's right. And conference realignment's always been a thing, even when it was a thing. Do you want to live in the world as it is, or do you want to live in the world as you want it to be? Because we're living in the world as it is. And the world as it is, these changes are taking place, period. We can't go back. The toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't go back. You can hate all these things. You can hate all these recent changes. You can hate the portal. You can hate NIL.
There's no going back.
It's not going back.
No,
you can't undo it, period. So moving forward, how do we make the best of what it will look like moving forward? And I think you need to strike some semblance of a balance and understand and accept, like West Virginia, I don't know, going to the Peach Bowl and knocking off NC State in 1975 was a big, big deal. But maybe the new version is West Virginia hosting a playoff game and winning it, and then going on the road and shocking an SEC team on the road. Maybe that's the new version of winning the Peach Bowl. As much as the Indiana conference fans love the conference championship, and they did because they hadn't had one in so long, they sure seem pretty eager to take over Miami Gardens, right? So they seem to love this just as much or more. Both those things are true. I really believe they are. Things are changing under our feet. We don't have to like it, but we're not going to change it. And we just have to figure out a way to navigate this, or at least reach a point that you know what to hope for. Most people don't necessarily know what to hope for. And I land quite simply, if you want me to distill this down to its essence, two things. Under this new structure, home field has to matter, because then it will impact seeding. That's the only way that you can make meaningful games meaningful all the way to the end of the regular season. Home field has to be crucial to give you a better seed, and you have to battle for that seed all the way to the last snap of your last game of the regular season. And point number two, I recognize you can't get to a point where 100% of the teams are determined structurally by who plays who on the football field, but you can damn sure get to a point where 95% of them are. You might still have a couple at large, a couple. I'm willing to live with a couple of the Olympic figure skating version. But I don't want 95% of them being determined by the Olympic figure skating judges. I want the Olympic figure skating judges to be neutered, their power to be mitigated and marginalized, and I want things to be set up. You go into the season knowing, if I want to go into the postseason in the Big 12, I better have a regular season that places me in the top two, or I better win those playing games 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5. Otherwise, I need to shut my mouth and go home, because it was all determined between the lines on a football field, not in a boardroom. And that's what I want.
I think we all want that. There's not much that we all agree on, but I think less committee, more determined parameters and qualifiers. Certainly, that doesn't matter. I think if you're Ohio State and Alabama, or if you're Virginia and Virginia Tech and West Virginia. I think anybody and everybody in between would agree with that. Let's get to a break here. When we come back on the other side, some WVU portal updates, and then we'll give some thoughts and predictions on how that national championship game between the Hoosiers and the Hurricanes will play out on Monday night. We'll do all that and more when we return. You are in the gun.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
You're listening to Mountaineer Football Talk.
ITG. When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnson Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready.
Low-rate financing available on select Coyote models.
Johnson Equipment, farming made easy.
Get all your Mountaineer gear in WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their 2 locations at downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive, or online at bookexchangewv.com.
Back in the gun here as we roll along, and it is time. This is going to be a weekly occurrence, at least for a little while here. Your WVU transfer portal update. Jed, since we all last spoke, about a week ago? Portal-specific updates about a week ago. We've had some more significant additions, as people can imagine. More in the trenches, an exciting playmaking wide receiver from the Bayou. Where do you want to start? You want to start with some wide receiver additions, also a kid from UConn, not only LSU. Is that maybe the most important place to start? I know we all spent a ton of time talking about the offensive line and laughing about, Rich and putting his hands up. You just need to get this much. I'm just trying to gain a yard, just this much. But I think we also knew that this offense was lacking some big time splash and playmakers too. So I don't know where you want to begin. You want to go to the trenches? You want to go to the wide receivers and the tight ends? What you got?
Let's start with the offensive skill guys. But the first thing I'd start with, in terms of the receivers and the tight ends anyway, we talked about Cam Cook last week coming from Jack State. But the things that you got to be reminded of is the portal window is going to close, and this is, in fact, the only portal window this year. There's not one coming later after the spring like there was last year. So this is it tonight at midnight local time, actually at 11:59 p.m. local time. So if you're a portal or recruiting nerd to that level, yes, if you have your eye on the USC backup left tackle and you're hoping he gets in, we have a chance. That could happen at 3 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. So 11:59 p.m. local time tonight is the last day you can enter. Now, that doesn't mean it's the last day you can sign. You can sign all the way up through the offseason. So you might still see scattered kids landing here or there as need presents itself once teams figure out some things through the spring or injuries arise or whatever. So, yes, you're going to still have additions being made. And most of the kids in the portal better hope you're still going to have additions being made because a lot of them are going to be left in the lurch. I mean, there are a ton of kids in the portal that simply won't find an FBS level home. They won't. That's the reality of it. I mean, even if you jump to Ohio State, and look at what's going on there. In recent days, I saw a number. They had 28 kids on their roster jump into the portal, and they had 10 at that juncture who had found a home. It's a saturated market. It really is. I mean, there's such a volume of players that people, without overpaying that awful much, can kind of find what they need if they know what and how to look for it. You mentioned the receiver position. We had a couple additions we discussed last week, a couple more this week. You got a kid from UConn that's long frame, big build kid, 6'2", 205. John Niter was a really good part of what they did for up with the Huskies this year. 27 catches, 400 and some odd yards, made the most of it with a 15.5-yard average. He's a physical kid. He's very steady. He's very dependable. When I see this, my comp would be Jeff Weimer. So how many times on the show be, oh, boy, it'd be nice to get Jeff Weimer back for a year. I'm not saying you're going to place Jeff Weimer. It's that type of kid and that kind of stability, relative stability, that I think he can confer to your offense. The more dynamic of the two would be Teron Francis out of LSU. You had a situation there where Brian Kelly was fired, so that staff scattered. His receiver coach went to Ohio State, and Ohio State wasn't in a position because they were overextended with the Chris Henry Juniors of the world. Yes, even Ohio State gets overextended. That's one of the reasons they had 28 kids in the portal, because most of them were probably asking for more money and they had to decline some of these kids. So he lands at West Virginia, and it's a big get for us. This is a kid who didn't play last year for him, but was very highly regarded coming out of high school in New Orleans down there. 6'1", 207, has a little bit of something to him. Can really make some things happen in space when you watch what he did in high school. But keep an eye on Teron Francis and the role that he might be playing on the perimeter in that receiver room for West Virginia. I think there's big play and splash play ability coming out of Francis in that room. Now, when you move to the tight end room, a couple kids, and these are power conference kids that moved and were dislodged in recent days. Josh Sapp out of Clemson. He's 6'2", 235. He played 3 years at Clemson, and even this year had 267 snaps, ended up with 11 catches for 150 yards. That's a 235-pounder that we'll be bringing in, and I think he's the kind of guy that if you move him around, if the personnel suits it, Rich does like to get into some of these 2 and 3 personnel looks that we talked about last offseason, and Josh Sapp can kind of help fill that role, as can Cam Ball, who is a big, lanky, 6'7", 250-pound man, open by birth type of kid, right? Out of Mississippi State. Had a couple catches for them, logged 139 snaps, so has played some high-level football against some high-level competition. It's nice to see some of these rooms. We're also going to have some retention in that room with some of the kids we have coming back, Ryan Ward and some others. And Owen, you're a guy, you used to double as both a fullback, yes, but also as a tight end. We ran that Ram and Lion, those formations with the 3 wides and the tight end. So you can speak to how much the tight end, even back in the day, meant in Rich's offense, but now he's reinvented it with these 2 and 3 tight end sets if he finds the guys that he likes, and he might not be done here, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about finding the right guys to fit the scheme. I mean, he was doing a lot of experimenting too, back then with me and put me at wing positions and even some slot positions, H-back, tight end, fullback deal. It's hard to find the perfect guy to play that position. You could look towards the NFL and you look at a guy like Kyle Juszczyk, very athletic, great ball skills, but as far as a run blocker, still gets it done, right? But is not as dominant as maybe like a Pat Ricard, from Baltimore, who's a traditional fullback. He's going to have always kind of like a roundabout guys that are good at 1 or 2 things, or at least two different things, what I mean? And he can sprinkle in a third thing, and he can adapt to that. So I think with, what we see as far as what he picks up, and we've already seen some really, really talented, young men that we have picked up this offseason. So I'm interested to see what the evolution of the position does this next year with Rich in the offense.
In the old school days of having an attached tight end directly on right next to your offensive tackle, as you touched on, Owen, he even tinkered with moving you into a wing some back then. Think of the flexibility that gives you, because most of these 2 and 3 multiple tight end sets that Rich likes to deploy, those are typically offline tight ends.
Yeah.
And one of the things that allows you to do is it gives you movement. Like if you want to go split zone, if you're in an attached tight end position next to the tackle on the line of scrimmage, you can't block backside and crash at 5 technique defensive end and run a split zone. But if you're in a wing, yeah, you're lined up perfectly to do that. So it gives you more options. So that's a great point on your part. I forgot that he tinkered with you in the wing too. As he gets more guys of that body type, and it's almost like the offensive version of the linebacker. They always say that the linebacker is the position that marries the run game to the pass game because he's between both those worlds and he so directly touches both those worlds. Well, that's the same with a tight end. He's going to be asked to block and play a prominent role in the run game, even if he's a receiver first. And he's also going to be asked to create matchups if he's an appropriate type body type and receiver in the pass game and be instrumental. So you're going to be asked to do a little bit of everything. So sometimes you might even target a guy. Like that's what we do with Grayson Barnes. I mean, nobody had any pretense about Grayson Barnes blowing a 315-pound defensive lineman on their butt last year, but maybe he could get in his way and mix it up with him. But you know what Grayson Barnes could do? What he could do with his size and his frame was he could get open. And he could create a matchup problem in passing situations. Sometimes you have a Malik Agbo, who at Texas, he's now a tackle for West Virginia, but at Texas, they used him the same as we use Nick Malone as an extra tackle that just happened to be occupying the tight end slot. So the more types of bodies that you recruit there, the better it's going to serve you for versatility on the offensive side.
Yeah, agree 100%, man. You want that in today's game. You got to have variety. You want to have as many looks, and what Rich is really good at is all the window dressings. So, with getting versatile players like that, it really opens up the playbook.
Absolutely.
Sure does. And what also opens up a playbook is being strong in the trenches and trusting those guys to hold up and pass protection and different sets and all those things. Again, I think I wouldn't even call it a worst kept secret because there was no secret about it that WVU was seeking some real transfer portal help, recruiting class with guys like Kevin Brown, but then, immediate impact, more seasoned guys from the transfer portal. Jed, at the tail end of one of our episodes last week, we actually kind of had the breaking news that Devin Voss committed, the big offensive lineman from Kansas State, but that certainly has not been it. They were far from done from adding some beef to that offensive line.
And we pointed out when we talked about Devin Voss at the end of last week's episode, we said, all right, it doesn't take a genius to connect the dots here and read the tea leaves. You're going to see a rush on offensive linemen coming in this class. And sure enough, here we are a week later having this very conversation. And what I like about it is that there's some commonalities shared by these guys that we're bringing in. And part of that is some of these guys were pretty highly coveted by some big brands. Some of these guys, Texas was trying to suit them, line things up. And so we'll get into some of that with these kids, but Wes King.
Great name.
Great name. Wes King. Don't get too tied up in terms of what they're listed and not listed at, because there might be some position flexibility, especially when Trickett gets a hold of them. We'll see how this unfolds. But Wes King is listed as an interior offensive lineman, center guard type out of Wyoming. Former teammate, I believe. I would need to check that, but I believe he was there when Braden Sider was there. So he's a 6'5", 313-pound kid, so a big man. There's a lot of man there out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Logged 683 snaps. So that's the other thing you're going to see recurring here. All these guys have played a lot of football. So it's not as much projection as it is the proofs in the pudding in terms of what their track record might be. Let's get into the couple that played for Trickett down at Jack State, earning all conference honors last year. Cam Griffin, 6'4", 305, also listed as interior offensive lineman out of Pinson, Alabama, over 1,000 snaps. And those aren't just 1,000 snaps playing for anybody. Those are 1,000 snaps playing for Rick Trickett. So how does that translate in dog years? I'm not really sure, but that means something, all right? That means something when you've taken that many reps under Rick Trickett. Bubba Grayson, I'm not going to try and call him by his real name. He's Bubba Grayson. I want to have a Bubba in this group. So he's Bubba
Yes,
Grayson,
sir.
the other Jack State kid, right? 6'3", 310 pounds. He's a Georgia kid. Logged almost 1,000 reps down there last year. If you get into the metrics, these kids were both impressive on tape, and they're going to bring a value to the room that kind of helps abbreviate some of the messaging from Rick Trickett. Oh, well, he means that. And these are the types of things that the other O lineman can ask them, when they're sitting there playing video games in their apartment. What do you mean when he say that? And that's how that works, right? I mean, it's like if you know somebody that played for the guy, you can kind of pick their brain and understand it. But if you want to get into the metrics, Bubba Grayson, on his way to earning all conference honors, he had the third lowest blown block percentage on run plays in all of Conference USA, which is why he garnered those honors. Had a really solid year. Only 2 holding calls against him all year. Cam Griffin only had 1 holding call on him all year. Yeah, a lot to say about both those kids. And Owen, you've been part of this before. When you arrived in Morgantown, how often did you lean on the guys who didn't just arrive in Morgantown and who were already there? That's kind of what these guys are going to bring to the table. They're going to be in these. Yes, it matters between the lines. Yes, it matters in meeting time, but it matters just as much outside of it. They're going to be buddies with these other guys in their position group that are trying to understand and master what Rick Trickett's trying to teach them. And here's a couple guys they can be buddies with and lean on outside of the building.
Yeah, well, and obviously Rick Trickett's not new to West Virginia, but he is this year. And, those guys coming in, it's going to be nice to have somebody to ask a question about what this guy is all about, because he brings an intensity that surpasses anything anybody is going to be used to. It is not the norm, what he brings. I say that's the norm for what I know and what he knows, but having a couple of, by the way, I love the name Bubba, especially for an O lineman, but having that much beef, I mean, I just think about it, blows my mind. Guys that are over 300, because when I played, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? We didn't have that kind of beef. We had some nasty, tough ball players, some dogs, but we didn't have the beef up front. So it's going to be interesting to see. You know what I mean? I can't wait to see these guys move. I know they're athletic for how big they are and how big their size is. The sheer fact that they've only been busted for 1 holding, what was it, two holding on one and one holding on the other. Yeah, which means they obviously move their feet. They're very good technically with their hands inside, I'm sure. Trickett is an absolute master, a goat, if you will, at that position as far as coaching goes. So, and as a player, just it's invaluable. You know what I mean? It's invaluable, the amount of knowledge and just the small ins and outs that you'll know, because you're going to want to catch up really quick on the lingo and the details of what Trickett has to say.
Great point on Owen's part there. It's one thing. Why do we toss a number out like that? Like they've only had 3 holding infractions between the 2 of them. When you get called for holding? When you're out of position. If something happened with your upper body that you had to extend your arm and extend a hand to latch onto a defender, that means something went fundamentally wrong with your lower body and you are out of position. So the more regularly you do what you should technically with your feet and with your lower body, the more often you're going to be in position and the less reason and less cause there is to be extending your arms and getting flagged for holding penalties. So there's a lot to be said for that. That right there speaks. We've talked about how many times already in the last week, Rick Trickett and technique. That right there, if you want to measure it, those are numbers right there that you can measure it through. That doesn't happen without a mastery of your technique and what's being asked of you at the point of attack with Rick Trickett. But Karsten Cassidy, Owen, big dude, more of a true tackle, 6'7", 300 pounds, North Carolina kid, logged a lot of playing time up there for UConn this year. I'm intrigued to see what he can do. And yes, I fully expect the technique of all these guys to improve under Rick Trickett. Karsten Cassidy had the highest run blocking grade out of this whole group. So what he did at UConn was already impressive. So his starting point's already impressive. And Trick's going to take that and just make it all that much better and more impressive. So as the technique improves, as their feet are in the right spots, as every inch of every step starts to matter in the world of Rick Trickett, which it does, it's almost like when I saw Trickett last week, and I got to catch up with him. I joked with him. I said, "Hey, here's your jug of water. Now we expect some wine." And you know what? I don't know that he's getting handed a jug of water because, yes, you're going to have some talent coming in this freshman class that's going to help right away up front on the O-line. Yes, you're going to have some talent, the influx from the portal, but you also have a couple kids. I'm excited to see what Landon Livingston can do, Nick Cray can do once they get a little taste of Rick Trickett. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They're about all the right things. The athleticism of Nick Cray with Rick Trickett's technique and the want-to of Landon Livingston with Rick Trickett's technique. So, yeah, I'm really excited, guys. But I think these are all, for different reasons, good fits in terms of what they do.
Yeah. Well, competition, man. That's the biggest thing.
Big, huge. Like, start looking at the two deep and asking yourself what that's going to look like on this O-line. And in some cases, I can't tell you who I think the front runner might be. And that is absolutely what you want. Because last year, that just wasn't the case.
Yep.
That just wasn't the case. I mean, the limitations were obvious. But now, at multiple spots, you're going to be like, well, wait a minute. Who's going to grab that? Who's going to win that battle? You're going to be pitted against that guy. He's going to be pitted against this guy. Iron makes iron stronger, and that room is going to be in a good spot.
Well, Jed, as we start to wrap up the transfer portal conversation here, a lot more additions on the offensive side of the ball, but a couple on defense and a couple on special teams.
Nice little toy for our new edge coach to work with in Harper Holloman out of Western Kentucky. A lot of things I like about this kid. Quick first step off the ball, which all great edge rushers have. Again, the production, you got to look beyond the TFLs and the sacks. Start looking at some tape, start diving deeper into the metrics. And this is a kid who he's 6'2", 255, so he brings a bit of a load, and he has enough burst to really get after you. 45 combined quarterback pressures, led all of Conference USA. And we talked last week about a kid we're getting out of Bowling Green who also, his quarterback pressure numbers are up there. So you start to look, and it gets pretty interesting as to what might be playing out in that room. But Harper Holloman, a guy we didn't have a chance to talk about last week, wasn't here yet, Atlanta, Georgia kid. I believe we talked about Stotsky last week. We did not talk about, and this kid is immediately on my own name team, Choms Jine, I believe that's the appropriate pronunciation. I'll leave that to Tony. He'll have to worry about that. But this kid is out of Georgia State. You talk about a long frame at the corner spot, 6'4", 200 pounds. Was productive in many instances against high-level competition. Played a good game against Ole Miss down there in Oxford. I think he's going to add a lot right away. That type of frame just doesn't grow on trees at that position. Make no mistake about it. He can play the ball, and he made some good things happen for them. So I think he's a great addition. And now this is where it gets interesting. We haven't talked much special teams this offseason. Kind of in one fell swoop over the course of a couple days, we addressed a lot of needs. Last I checked, isn't Ethan Head in the portal, Wes? I believe he is.
I believe so, yes.
I believe Ethan Head's in the portal. Here's what's going on. You had an interesting situation with a punter who was signed, then he wasn't signed, the Aussie kid, and he ends up landing somewhere else. Well, we didn't sweat it. Oh, we went out and signed Brian Hansen, a 6'3", 210-pound long kid out of Colleyville, Texas, who was at Colorado State punting up in the mountains last year. His net average of 47.6 yards, it was number 3 in the nation. He was consistently just booming that thing down the field. And then if you move on, and of course, we're going to have to fill the role, a huge void by Ollie. Ollie Straw was an instrumental part of what we did the last couple of years. So I'm excited to see what Brian Hansen can do trying to fill that role. We got a Peter Nataro. He's a place kicker that was very highly regarded coming out of Wexford, PA, when he signed with Alabama. Spot played a little bit for the Tide last year, had a few PAT attempts, but just a very highly recruited kid. He was a 5-star recruit by Cole's Kicking coming out of Wexford, and he was ranked as a 3-star recruit, but the number 8 kicker overall in the country by ESPN. This is a kid who at North Allegheny in southwestern PA kicked a 53-yard field goal.
We might know somebody that was living in that school district until they were in 2nd grade. Huh?
Okay.
That's the University of North Allegheny to you. That's actually what they call themselves because they have like over 4,000 kids in the high school. It's massive. Over 1,000 kids per class in the school there. And they've had some insane athletes come through there, most notably Joey Porter Jr., who of course went to Penn State and was a not too long ago draft pick of the Steelers and just had himself an outstanding season. But yeah, it's a massive high school, over 4,000 kids in that high school, and he's a legend.
When you kick a 53-yard field goal in high school, you get my attention because you're playing with bad balls. It probably wasn't a very good hold. Operationally, it probably wasn't a very good snap. I mean, I think of all these things that can go wrong at that level. And if you're doing that, even at a high level like North Allegheny, that says something. So I'm excited about that kid. But speaking of long boomers, let's move on to this. We signed 2 kickers, and you might be curious, well, why would you do that other than to foster competition, which is the obvious answer? But let's talk about Jack Cassidy from Western Kentucky, a Northern Ireland kid, 6'6", 220 pounds. Start with this. You know what I didn't mention with Peter Notaro? Kickoffs. What have we been sorely lacking in recent years, guys? That every team we face seems to have, and we're
Kick
just
it through
their
the back of
fundamental
the end zone.
disadvantage. Yes. So Jack Cassidy at Western Kentucky, his touchback rate was 71%, 82% at home. You get him in that ballpark, get him in there with Mike Joseph, make his overall body strength improve, get his muscle mass to improve, get his body fat percentage down a little bit. Who knows what you might be able to turn a guy like that into? And maybe he's one of these 75 to 80% touchback guys that they're so coveted. It's hard to find, but maybe we found one in Jack Cassidy. And not only that, here's where it gets even more interesting. Guys, he had 3 field goal tries, and yes, he was 3 for 3. But here's what's most intriguing about it. He was their long range specialist. 2 of his 3 were beyond 50 yards. He was 2 for 2 beyond 50 yards, and the other one was beyond 40. So they were all long distance kicks. You talk about a nice little well-rounded weapon, a versatile weapon to throw in there and challenge your kicker, your highly regarded kicker in Peter Notaro. Well, now you got Jack Cassidy. Not only can he handle your kickoff duties, but also he's going to be looking at Peter Notaro saying, oh, yeah, watch this, as he bumps a 57-yarder in practice, right? I really like what that's all about, Owen. Whether it's the punter or it's the combination of the 2 kickers, those are some needs that you want to win more games. You got to win hand yardage and all these other little things too. So you're stacking pennies with that.
Takes all 3 phases.
Yeah, all 3 phases.
That's why every head coach always says all 3 sides of the ball, baby. And hopefully the Mountaineers got a little bit better on all 3 sides of the ball here in the past week. And we'll have, obviously, again, this will not be the conclusion of our transfer portal conversation. We'll be keeping an eye on
North Allegheny. They have turf?
It's a good question. I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Still, 53 impresses me.
You should see my God, they get more people at their high school football games than Pitt does on Saturdays. Well, I guess I guess when you frame it that way, it's not that impressive. Speaking of the college football season, it wraps up Monday night in Miami. Well, Miami Gardens, if we're being technical, right? Same scene of the crime where WVU ran over Clemson in the Orange Bowl back in 2012. I was there for that one, hoping to get back to that stadium for another big Mountaineers game here in the not too distant future. But it will be just like everybody predicted. Indiana against Miami for the national championship on Monday night, guys. 2 programs with, head coaches that are incredibly, rightfully so, incredible storylines. Indiana, that's the hottest, the most relevant, the best they've been in program history. Miami, who, of course, at time ran this sport and is looking to restore that glory and get their first national championship since early in the 21st century. Guys, Indiana, 8.5-point favorite. I mean, I think they should be the favorites, but that's a big number for a national championship game. I'm picking Indiana to win because they just feel like a team of destiny, and Signetti and Mendoza. It feels like their time. But man, like if I were betting the money line there, or not the money line, if I were betting the spread there, part of me, I think I would take the points because 8.5. I mean, that's a big number for a Miami team that certainly is going to have some first round picks and some real talented athletes in their own right, and an experienced veteran quarterback in Carson Beck. How do we think this one plays out, gentlemen, on Monday night down in Miami Gardens?
Did you see him calling this the first all-Cuban national championship?
Who wins the Cuban Missile Crisis Monday night in South Florida?
I like it. All right, let's run through some numbers because that's what jumps out at me too, Wes. 8.5. I'm going to make it hard on you guys because at the end, anybody can pick, just pick it cold. We're going to have to go with the line on this one. We're going to have to pick the line. Okay. So I'm going to ask for a pick from both of you at the end. If you break down the numbers in so many ways, they're mirror images of each other. They really are. They're both so effective at all the right things. It's such an incredible matchup, and I'm just happy that for the third year in a row, the SEC's not in it. There's not a true modern blue blood. The closest you can get is Miami, who last was relevant 20 plus years ago. So I think it's an intriguing matchup. I like the matchup. I'm going to double back and ask you guys for your pick with the spread. But Owen, what are your initial thoughts here before we go with our picks?
Well, Jed, I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of you. I think it's just fresh, breath of fresh air. Two just different squads. Indiana, obviously, man, they're playing such disciplined football right now, and I can see Indiana really breaking down if Miami's defensive line really starts to get pressure on Mendoza. Obviously, you can look at that both ways, but I feel like to crack the armor of Indiana, their D line is going to have to play next level ball. They're going to have to get pressure on them. They're going to have to knock them down, not just once, not just twice. They're going to have full pressure on him all game long. That being said, man, it's such a Cinderella story. It's hard not to root for Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers, man. I mean, it's just been fun to watch them. It's a great story in football, a hell of a comeback for a university that's never in its, existence been known as a football school. So, like I said, it's for me, I'm definitely, I have a buddy who's a hardcore Miami fan. So I have to root against him anyways, because that's just the nature of my friendship. So they just destroyed the last two opponents that played, Alabama and Oregon. And they destroyed Oregon almost to the point where I was like, man, can Miami really even play with them? I mean, it's just hard for me to believe. I don't know. Like I said, it would have to take a lot of Miami's defense really smashing. I mean, dude, they're good at everything. They're good at everything. And I understand both sides are very good at everything, but it just seems in the big games we've seen in the playoffs here, Kurt and them they're peaking at the exact moment they need to peak. And that's going to be in this ball game.
Very true.
Certainly think that there's a good chance that's the case. And we got a little Mountaineer back history between some of these coordinators too, don't we? As a little side plot for WVU fans to keep an eye on before we give our predictions.
Dana's old OC. Yeah,
yep.
I mean, you got
Shannon Dawson.
You got a D1 guy, and then you got some small time guys, right? You got some guys at DC Brian Haynes, who's been with Coach Cignetti for his his existence of coaching. And how can I say this? Football is football, in my opinion, right? And good football is learned at all levels. I was fortunate a couple weeks ago to watch UWRF win their first national championship, small football. But you listen to what Coach Matt Walker and what Coach Cignetti talk about on the same parallels, and it's like, it's disciplined football. It's doing what you believe in, not worrying about what everybody else is doing. And those guys that have gone from each and every level of football and have been able to compete and excel. They're different athletes you're working with at each level, and you're learning certain things that I feel is almost an advantage. As you bring your way up, and I'm not saying that one guy's better than the other. I just think there's more adversity coaching D3, coaching D2, coaching, 2A, whatever it was back in the day when they were there. It's going to be such a good game. It's going to be such a good game, and I'm pumped to see how that works out for them.
I'm going to start with this. I trust Fernando Mendoza way more than I trust Carson Beck.
Yes.
All right. So if you're going to ask me outright, that's my decision maker. But if you're going to ask me about this chunky 8.5 point line, I go back to this. it seems like just about every week all season, we sat back and watched Indiana not beat people, but dismantle people. I mean, they were old school, blowing off the. I saw some metric that the last time a team won this, scored 50 plus, 55 plus in so many games, and won by 30 in so many games was in the 1880s. We literally haven't seen this in 100 and some odd years, all right, in college football. So I go back to 4 games were competitive. There were only 4 that were competitive that Indiana played all year.
Oregon,
okay, Oregon's
Ohio
won
State,
at Oregon.
Penn State.
Ohio State's won. Okay, you're halfway
Old
there.
Dominion.
Old Dominion wasn't really. It was 27-14, but I wouldn't consider it competitive. You know what I mean?
Come on.
Hey, that was the lowest.
At their game at Oregon, their game at Penn State, the Big Ten championship against Ohio State. What's the 4th one?
Okay, you got Iowa was 20-15.
Iowa, that's right. That's right.
Remember the
Iowa.
Penn State game? Okay, now what did those 4 games have in common? I'll tell you. What might be, to me, for all the strengths Indiana has, the one that I think makes them hum the most is it impacts all the other things they're good at. They're so dominant with their offensive success on third down. They stay ahead of the chains. They move the chains. They win time of possession. They get you off the field. Those are the only 4 games where they were mortal on third down. Here are the numbers in those 4 games you just mentioned. The Iowa game, they only converted 40%. Not bad, but very mortal. The Oregon game, at Oregon, it was a game, 36%. Very mortal. I mean, these other games are off the hook, okay? Penn State, 42% they converted on third down. Very mortal. The Ohio State game, 46%. And meanwhile, look what they did to Alabama and Oregon the last 2 weeks. They were 65% against Alabama on third down. Guys, they were 79% on third down against Oregon. Here's where this gets interesting to me. To win on third down, you got to win on early downs. You got to win on first down. Miami defensively has allowed the lowest yards per carry in the ACC on first down. Miami defensively has allowed the 3rd lowest passer rating in the ACC on first down. If Miami can find a way to win some first downs and put them also slightly off schedule, they are so dominant and so awesome at it, they're not used to living in that world. That's their kryptonite. The question is, can Miami do it? I think Miami might be able to do it enough to get within that 8.5-point spread. That's what I'm going to call for. I'm not picking against Fernando Mendoza. Are you kidding me? I think Carson Beck's up and down, and when he gets hot, you don't want to mess with him. But Fernando Mendoza is just so steady Eddie. He's never down. But I think defensively, if Miami can find a way to get to that kryptonite, even if they can get him down to 48%, just a world they're not used to living in, those 4 games are the only time they've been asked to live in that world and make hay with the same third down success that everybody else has to live with. They were very mortal when that happened. Those 4 games, a couple plays here or there, they might lose them.
Interesting.
So that's what I'm going with. Maybe I'm way off, and maybe they come out and convert 80% on third down, just like they have the last 2 weeks. But that's what I'm thinking. If Miami has a chance, that might be it. Even turnover margin. They're both very good at it. They're both very opportunistic. So what do you guys think? The 8.5-point line attached. What say you?
I'm still going Indy.
8.5 plus?
Yeah.
I think I'm going Hoosiers to win, but Canes to cover.
Ooh,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because think about it, guys. Like Indiana could be up 21 in the 4th quarter with 4 minutes left, and Miami scores back-to-back garbage time touchdowns, and they end up losing by 7. I mean, or
like this feels like a 27-20 kind of thing to me. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe Indiana drops 50 on them too. But I don't know, like 27-20, something like that.
It could be 27-13, and Miami could score with 30 seconds left and backdoor cover.
Consolation touchdown, or who knows? Yeah. But
I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the national championship game every year. But as Owen kind of touched on it, even though Miami is a historic program, they haven't been here in over 20 years. It feels like some fresh blood finally. And they're not a Big Ten or an SEC school. Wow, imagine that! Unbelievable. I thought those were the only 2 conferences that were allowed to make it to the national championship game.
He's
gentlemen,
one of those schools, guys, that I think college football is better when they're good, when they're relevant, because they're such a great villain.
Yeah, totally.
No,
Michael Irvin belting trash cans on the sideline.
I mean, so many people say that about West Virginia, not because of the villain part, but college football is better when West Virginia is relevant. I agree with that too. I'm detaching myself from my Mountaineer fandom, but I think Miami's one of those teams. There are certain teams that I just think the game's better and more compelling when they're good. And Miami is, because they can be a villain. But I'm excited too. It's different. It's not the same old. No matter what happens, it's intriguing for different reasons. So here we go. Who would have thought when you watch Miami play, you talk about the evolution of a play caller. Shannon Dawson coming from his old school air raid, throw it first, second, and third
mummy,
roots,
baby,
to developing into this style of play caller who likes to play keep away, cater to the defense. That's one of the reasons they're winning games. They're smart about it.
Going to be a lot of fun, and we'll obviously recap. Give some thoughts on how it all plays out next week when we gather here once again. But that will do it for us today. That'll do it for us this week. So as always, I thank you to our producer / co-host, Mr. Do-It-All, Schuyler Callihan, for the off the injured reserve, sharp-dressed, barbecue and beer trucking Big O, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning. I'm Wes Uhler. The one thing that we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We will talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.